Now it's my pleasure to introduce you to the co-vice chair of the Inter-American Dialogue and the chairman of McLarty Associates, the Honorable Thomas Mack McLarty.
Good evening. It is a personal pleasure for me to say a few words about a friend and a leader that I genuinely admire, Senator Tim Kaine, who is this year's recipient of the Dialogues Award for Public Service in the Americas. All of us here that are gathered in this elegant and beautiful facility deeply care about hemispheric affairs. And it's probably fair to say that we've often been concerned about the lack of sustained U.S. engagement, either real or perceived, toward the region. Senator Tim Kaine does not fit that mold in any way. As a Harvard Law student, Tim took a year-long sabbatical to serve as a missionary in Honduras. During his stay, he became fluent in Spanish and developed a strong affinity for and an understanding of Latin America. And that connection has only grown over the years in his career and distinguished public servant. Tim knows this region in a singular way in the United States Senate. He is committed to developing trusting partnerships with our neighbors, and he is keenly aware of the value of that to his beloved home state, to our nation, and to all of our people. He has been a champion of hemispheric interest as a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and the U.S.-Mexico Interparliamentary Group, working toward the day, as he puts it, when our North-South foreign policy will be as prominent as our East-West foreign policy. And at home, he has been an advocate of increasing engagement between Hispanic communities and their local representatives. But perhaps nothing illustrates Tim's dedication to outreach and inclusion more than a speech that he gave on the floor of the United States Senate a little over a year ago on the critical issue of immigration reform. His remarks were delivered entirely in Spanish, a historic first in the congressional record. And I suspect as long as Tim Kaine is in the Senate, which I hope and believe will be a long time, I don't think this will be the last time we may see this. And that gesture, like countless of others, really underscores Tim's resolve to build strong bridges between our countries, our communities in the Americas. And as one of only 20 Americans who have served as a mayor, as a governor, and as a United States Senator, pretty select group, Senator Kaine, Tim, I think, is uniquely equipped to understand the political arena and to put the power of government to work for the public good. Decency and principle and integrity and competence are words that come to mind to characterize his leadership. He has consistently put the national interest above narrow interest, shared progress above partisan gain. So in all these ways, he is a perfect representative of the values of the dialogue itself. And for all of these reasons, it is my honor and privilege to present the Inter-American Dialogue Award for Public Service in the Americas to Senator Tim Kaine of the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Well, to Mac McClarty and to this wonderful, wonderful audience, gracias a todos y buenas noches. I don't like to follow Salvador Pais. He is a very, very impressive recipient, and I'm so happy that we were able to be here together. But let me thank Mac and let me thank all of you. And Michael, this is a special and personally meaningful honor. So to the dialogue, I just want to thank you for this honor this evening. The dialogue is so important in its gathering of the great minds of this hemisphere to grapple with the relationships that have such deep roots but can always be stronger. And I will say I have a special appreciation tonight because this dialogue and forum and award are in the name of Saul Linowitz. I hope most of you know of the great legacy of Saul Linowitz, a consummate public servant who, on behalf of the United States, was key to the negotiation of the Panama Canal Treaty that returned the Panama Canal to the country of Panama. Saul's daughter Jan and I were teaching assistants in a literature course at Harvard University in 1982. And so that has a special tie to me because although I never met Saul personally, I knew of his legacy, and the ability to be here at this forum and with an award that is kind of connected to him is important. Mac told you a bit about me, but if you'll allow me, I would like to talk a bit more about why I'm so passionate about the relation between the United States and our neighbors, our great neighbors in Latin America. Cuando tenía 21 años, yo salí Harvard Law School por un año a trabajar con misioneros jesuitas en Honduras, un grupo de misioneros muy especiales en un pueblito muy pequeño en este tiempo que se llama El Progreso, cerca de San Pedro Sula. Y en este año yo aprendí bastante. Yo fui un maestro de soldadura y carpintería en el Instituto Técnico Loyola, porque mi padre era un soldador. And I learned a little bit of Espanol. But what I really learned about was the beauty and the faith and the love of family and the beautiful culture of my neighbors and amigos in Honduras. I learned about my own faith and what I took for granted. I lived in at that time, a military dictatorship where no one could vote for anything, and reflected upon my own lackadaisical voting record as a young man in the United States. I learned so very, very much. That year in Honduras and the lessons I learned there are the pivotal experiences of my life, only equaled by marriage and fatherhood. And there is not a day that goes by that I don't think about my friends and that year in Honduras. In fact, today, this is my fourth meeting today about asuntos latinoamericanos, dos en inglés y dos en español. And one of the meetings today was with a missionary from Honduras who runs a radio station, Radio Progreso, an important radio station for the people in my town of El Progreso, and we met up on Capitol Hill. This is an everyday North Star point of reflection in my life. I returned to Virginia, and now I'm from Kansas originally, but I married a Virginian who's a better negotiator, so por 30 años I've lived in Richmond. And when I returned to Virginia, solo hablé español una vez cada 3 o 4 meses, porque la población latina en Virginia no era muy grande, in Richmond especialmente. Pero over the 30 years that I've lived in Virginia, cada día la población latina está creciendo más y más y más. Y ahorita casi 8 o 10% de la población in Virginia son latinos. And it has been such a fantastic thing for our Commonwealth. When I was running for governor, one of the attacks on me was that I was soft on illegal immigrants. That was in 2005. And meanwhile, I was cutting ads in Spanish. One Sunday afternoon when I was running for governor, a friend called and said, "Tim, I always knew you had a lot of guts, but boy, I never realized how many till today." I said, "What happened today?" "I was watching a Redskins game, and there was an ad attacking you for being soft on illegal immigrants, and the next ad was you in Spanish asking people to vote for you." Now, I immediately called my ad guy and said, "Why did you run that on the Redskins? I thought that was running on Univision or Telemundo." And he said, "We're running it on the Redskins because Latinos are the most loyal watchers of the Redskins game." But it has been to the enormous benefit of our state, to the enormous benefit of our country, and an object of real pride and satisfaction for me to see the growth of the Latino population in Virginia in cualquier parte del estado, in cualquier profesión. We have elected officials, business leaders, academics, doctors, lawyers. We have a population where the Latino growth in Virginia has been part of our success story. In my lifetime, we've gone from bottom 10 median income to top 10. And we've gone there because of a talent economy that has welcomed talent, whoever it is, from whatever country, from whatever skin color, with whatever accent. The societies that recognize and welcome talent are the societies that are going to be the most successful in the world. And the growth of our Latino population in Virginia has been part of that. And so for the last 2 years, as Mac indicated, I've had the opportunity now to come to the United States Senate. I was fortunate to be tasked with being on the Foreign Relations Committee, where I can work on Western Hemisphere issues. That's why I had 4 meetings on Latin America and Asuntos today. I am the co-chair of the U.S.-Mexico Interparliamentary Group. I am the U.S. chair of the U.S.-Spain Dialogue. And as Max said, the main value that I try to provide is just with my passion for this relationship to remind people in the United States Senate that everything about foreign policy doesn't run on an east-west axis. And so when we had a debate on the floor of the Senate in June of 2013 about immigration reform, I stood up and I began in Spanish by saying that if we're going to have 2 or 3 weeks of debate, which we did about immigration reform, it was a good idea to spend at least 20 minutes talking in a language that is spoken in the homes of 40 million Americans, and a language that has been spoken continuously in the United States since St. Augustine, Florida was settled in 1565. Since 1565. Let me conclude and say this. What I hope, Michael, and to all friends of the dialogue that we can work on together is, I think there's sort of what I'll call a spirit of 2015. 2015 is the 450th anniversary of our nation's Hispanic and Latino roots, with that foundation of the Hispanic community, the continuous Hispanic community in St. Augustine. Now, when I was governor of Virginia in 2007, I invited Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip to come visit us, and I hosted them in Richmond and in Jamestown, and we celebrated 400 years of English-speaking civilization in the New World. Spanish-speaking civilization in this country predated Jamestown by 42 years. I think in 2015, while we see it around us every day, the celebration of our Latino roots and our Latino relationships, I think 2015 is a fantastic year to not discover, but to reclaim and to celebrate this great Hispanic roots as our nation. We sometimes talk about our Latino immigrants as if it's kind of a new thing. No, the United States of America is a nation with Latino and Hispanic roots from its very inception, from before its inception. And the year that we are coming into gives us an excellent opportunity to celebrate that, to use it to drive forward important priorities like immigration reform, to use it as a key driver for hopefully meaningful dialogue, but more than dialogue, accomplishments at the Summit of the Americas that will take place in early 2015. And as Mac actually kind of stole my line, I've often said at the Foreign Relations Committee that the United States' foreign policy, the way we look at the world, it seems always to have revolved around an east-west axis. And even sometimes when we've had, let me be a bit self-critical, sometimes when we've had a north-south policy like the Monroe Doctrine, the Monroe Doctrine was really about Europe. It wasn't really about the Americas. During the Cold War, we engaged with Latin America, but it was really about the Soviet Union. It wasn't really about Latin America. President Kennedy started that grand experience, the alliance, and his death cut that short. But we now have an opportunity with thriving economies in Latin America, with the United States' number one and number two largest trade partners, number one Canada, number two Mexico. If our trade and economic partners are north-south, why does our foreign policy have to be about Europe and the Middle East and Asia? Though very important regions, I'm not saying that. But can't we have a foreign policy that more aligns with our economic reality? Can't we do that? Well, if we're going to align the way we think about our relationships with the world to more match the reality of our economies, it's the inter-American dialogue, it's those of us in public life who care about this that are going to make that happen. I think we are in a beautiful kind of a Latino moment, an America moment in this country, and the sky's the limit for virtually everything we can do if we do it together. Thank you so much for this kind of work.
Thank you, Senator Kaine, for being with us tonight and for reminding us that acknowledging the roots of the foundation of the United States doesn't have to be an either-or exercise. You don't have to choose between Plymouth Rock and San Agustin. You don't have to choose between Jamestown and Santa Fe. It doesn't have to be either-or. It can be both and, because our history includes both. And San Agustin had laid out streets and a governor's residence before there was a Jamestown, before there was a Plymouth Rock. Welcome to the end of a remarkable evening. Thanks to our honorees, our special guests, thanks to our friends and sponsors, and thanks to all of you for being here to share in this celebration. On behalf of the Gala Committee and the leadership of the Inter-American Dialogue, I thank you. We invite you to stay and enjoy more music by the Antonio Madruga Trio. Thanks, good night, hasta la próxima vez.